Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to another episode of Newsflash. We have an important one for you and a good one for you, as always. As if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the onslaught of lies and BS and smears that have come out from the pro-Israel lobby over the past few days and feel like you just don't know what to believe anymore and want to get a fair, based in facts view of this conflict, you have come to the right podcast. Let me tell you, we're going to go through some of the biggest happenings of the war today. So we have seen that some of the more information from some of the Hamas strikes are coming through, just in that a Thai citizen has passed away who was trying to, and the prime minister there saying that they want to evacuate all nationals as fast as possible. We'll take a look at some of the other events of today, including the continued bombardment of Gaza and some real horrific stuff coming out of the West Bank. Also, new videos showing that Hamas has now appeared to release a woman and two children, two hostages, back into Israel. We'll find out a little bit more about that. And a reporter's notebook, Maram Humaid from Gaza City, with a really heart-wrenching story out of Gaza for Al Jazeera today. And we'll also take a look at some just random other pieces of information that I have collected for us today to take a look at. Yeah, it was some really, really incredible stuff. All right, so we have to get into it all. So it is a really interesting situation going on throughout this entire entire day. Really interesting. The morning started off with the possibility, it seemed, that Hezbollah had joined the war, but it turns out Israel said that after they pushed for and called for all of their citizens in the north from Haifa up to the northern border to go into air raid shelters, they said that was a false alarm, and that Hezbollah has not taken the attacks and has not in any way tried to attack Israel. Maybe there were some few rockets, but nothing too crazy. Then a few hours later, we saw the unification of the Israeli government, and an emergency government has been put in place. And it really is a sign of how this Hamas offensive has brought together a pretty fractured political scene, put a stop to the weekly anti-government protests that threatened to topple a government among the most radical in its history. And for Israelis, it has prompted grief, outrage, and an emphasis on unrestrained military response. Taking a look at that Israeli emergency government, which I think is a pretty important thing to do. And one of the biggest preconditions, is this war cabinet. One of the biggest preconditions that someone like Benny Gantz had for rejoining is that people like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir had to be pushed off to the side. The Israeli Prime Minister, again, he has announced that emergency wartime government as pressure mounts from the establishment of corridors to allow aid and medicine into the Gaza Strip and allow civilians to leave. Which is something that they have not done. There were attacks, there were bombs going off today at the Israeli, or not even the Israeli crossing, the Erez crossing, which goes from the north of the Gaza Strip and Israel, but the southeastern crossing into Israel. The only two ways out. Civilians were fleeing in a completely unthreatening way, but they were bombed because they want these people kenneled up. They want this to be the final confrontation. That's what they're saying in Israel, and people in the West are, meanwhile, again, it's always this two-sided narrative. People in Israel are being prepared for a massive confrontation, on both sides. Both the Palestinians and the Israelis, especially the Israelis, are really getting geared up every day. There's 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 troops being massed at the northern border. But meanwhile, we have all of these Western sob stories that are being perpetrated, that they're being pushed out by Israeli social media accounts. They're being put up on Instagram stories. It's prompting DMs. It's like there is an intense pressure coming from the top down. And it's actually, spreading out pretty well, from clips on CNN to these Instagram stories that have these horrific allegations that, it really, as we saw, came from the top down today. I'll get to that in a moment. But, all of this stuff is, really, really kind of a different situation. As we see, more and more videos coming out of horrific situations, horrific crimes, just from white phosphorus to the continued hitting of apartment buildings, civilian targets without any warning. We continue to see these horrible crimes going on in Gaza. But, when it comes to the Israeli situation, we hear of horrific situations, but we do not see any unsubstantiated evidence. And this is, again, a very, very important highlight. This is not to say that there was not any crimes being committed by the Hamas, militants. This is a completely, unsurprising thing that there were crimes committed. I mean, heck, there are crimes committed every day, by the Israelis towards the Palestinians. It's not a surprise if there were some, awful things that should be completely done by Hamas. But, let's look at the facts here. Pretty much every single major story has at least had some form if not conclusive denial, but at least some sort of clarification, some sort of callback. We saw these, some of the music festival stories have been, contradicted. Probably one of the most important and probably one of the most absolutely fucking insane, I'm sorry, excuse my French, but was this baby beheading story. Where it all came out. I remember yesterday being like, "Oh my God, this is just unimaginable." Like, just the image that that they want you to conjure up, that that the brain naturally conjures up in any normal human, is a baby, just corpses of babies, baby heads lying on the floor. It's just like an absolutely horrific situation, and it's like, how could your heart not just absolutely break about that, and also really your just stomach just make you feel sick, and you're just like, a lot of people are just like, oh my gosh, I'm sure there's gonna be some sort of evidence, some sort of video, some sort of confirmation of this, and people start asking around, people start asking the Israeli army, because originally the claim comes from an I-24 news reporter. By the way, I-24, known to be closely associated, this is according to Haaretz investigation, which is the New York Times, essentially the English language top newspaper in Israel. But it was known that they have I-24, the news channel, has a close tie to Hamas, into the Netanyahu government, this Israeli news channel. And they said, one person in the army, when we were walking around, they said that there was evidence of babies that had been beheaded, or babies without their heads. That's what Nicole Zadek, who is the I-24 reporter, said. But then, there's freak out. There's calls for, more clarification, or clarification is given. The Israeli army confirms to 3 different news outlets that they have found no evidence, absolutely none, of this happening. And today, Oren Ziv, another Israeli reporter who was on that same press tour where the international people, where international reporters were brought into Kfar Asa, I'm not sure, I'm probably butchering that pronunciation there, the kibbutz that was, so hard hit by Hamas, and this guy who was supposedly on the same press tour as Nicole Zadek, who originally made this horrific claim, he says that no one was told of these babies being massacred, and there was no evidence that was even presented. So that makes you wonder even more. But then you hear President Joe Biden, the leader of the free world, step up to the lectern in the Rose Garden and say, the idea that I would see confirmed pictures of dead babies executed by Hamas is absolutely stunning. So that causes a bunch of people to be like, oh wait, oh my God, Biden saw the pictures, it must be real. Like, this is an absolutely horrific situation. Like, this is like, I'm sure these pictures are going to come out, any minute. Like, this is a crime that will define the Palestinian, movement, right or wrong. It's going to define the Palestinian movement going forward. And whether you like it or not, because it's just that much of an awful crime, and it totally overshadows what the Israelis have done, all that stuff. Here's how that sounded on Fox News.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever. Anyway, but there are countries in the region are trying to be of some help.
Yeah, by the way, like that is classic asleep Biden there. But anyway, a few hours later, they called, they asked for clarification. And this is in the Washington Post, a few paragraphs down, not even really severely covered. A White House spokesperson later clarified that U.S. officials and the president had not seen pictures or confirmed such reports independently. The president based his comments about the alleged atrocities on the claims from Netanyahu's spokesperson and the media reports from Israel, according to the White House. So, again, no special reports. Already times, where the people, other reporters who are on that tour are saying, I don't know what this lady is talking about, with all due respect. So this story pretty much is becoming harder and harder to believe. And this comes with other stories where there, again, has just been no substantiated evidence for any of it. But, meanwhile, there are white phosphorus being targeted, white phosphorus being used to target people. We have, really, really horrific situations where, there are all sorts of apartment buildings being targeted. You have all sorts of, civilian targets. There was, some reports today coming out of Gaza that, ambulances were hit. And obviously, Yoav Gallant, this is the defense minister who a few days ago said that there were human animals that we need to, fight like they, treat them like they're human animals and wipe them out in the Gaza Strip. He came out and said, that we are not going to give them any electricity, any fuel. That is really hampering the medical process. And apparently, there has been some pretty valid reports, some pretty, reliable reports. And this, by the way, lines up with things that they've done in the past, even as recently as the raid on the refugee camp in Jenin earlier this year, which is targeting medical staff, targeting ambulances and things like that. It is absolutely horrific. It beggars. It is impossible to wrap your mind around. And the fact that, by the way, the fact that Joe Biden can come out there and meanwhile and say these things about these crimes that didn't even happen by all available evidence, and then just do some, willy-nilly clarification. But meanwhile, of course, he get treated, for the past 2 days like it was the biggest story in the world. It was the most it was the worst thing to happen, since the Holocaust. And even then, it may even equal the Holocaust. Like, that's how it was treated and was used to completely justify a horrific display of wanton violence against the Gazans. And, now that it's, too late, screw it, we'll just put it in, page 8A. Or A8 or whatever, on below the fold in the bottom corner. That is what they did. That is what they did. And think about why they did that. Are they just trying to hide behind Biden just being old and misspeaking, or are these stories coming out and then slowly being walked back, kind of off the scenes, behind the scenes, without too much fanfare, for another reason, which is because they want people to have in the back of their mind this nagging doubt, this situation that. I read these pretty awful stories. I didn't see any real confirmation of, especially, the stories about the beheading babies, but, they're Hamas, they wear those scary headdresses, they probably did it. Like, that is what people will think when time and time again, and again, there's a video today of them releasing Israeli captives back into Israel. Another one said that, Hamas treated the family with perfect respect and asked before he took a banana from their fruit bowl or something like that. Like that is a video of an actual, this is not being contested by anyone. This is an actual video of an actual Israeli person. Again, if you ask me what, using my experience and knowledge of the world, if some really, especially some of the, the sexual violence and the rapes and stuff like that was alleged by the Israeli side took place, and especially some of the mistreatment of Israeli civilians, I would say absolutely that sounds right. It is a horrific situation. It is a situation where Palestinians are, rebelling in this, or, kind of breaking out, lashing out in a way that was, only too expected. You can read that take. This is, not an anti-Semitic take. This is a take that I got from Gideon Levy in Haaretz, which is again one of the biggest, most important newspapers in Israel. Like, I didn't pull this up out of thin cloth here, or out of whole cloth. This is a really it is a really, really horrific situation. It is up to a point, we have 1,200 dead in Gaza. The ministry has also reported that 5,600 people have been wounded in the attacks. This is at least 1,200 due to the fact that this is as of 1 hour ago. And this is, we have a security a complete blackout of any resources, no medical equipment. None of that is coming in or out. No fuel, it is no electricity. None of that. So the things they need to even power the hospitals, the things they need to rebuild, they are just not getting. They're already facing an overcapacity to some of the mounting casualties. They have continuing air raids right now inside the moment. This time the attacks are concentrated in the Al-Sabra neighborhood of central Gaza, the city of Khan Yunis in the south, and as well as the western parts of the Strip. The Al-Karama neighborhood, which has been attacked earlier, has also been hit in the past hours. Gazans know there is no safe place inside the Strip. Every place could be hit, even shelters affiliated with the United Nations. Many Palestinians from Gaza working in Israel have been dumped in the West Bank. Many Palestinians, they kind of cross over to work and then are made to, go back. But on Saturday, Israeli police told their employers to take them to checkpoints from where they were taken to the occupied West Bank, far from their homes, with no way to get back. So this is, not only are this is just a whole nother level, because not only are they, say you work in most of these people are used for construction, in Israeli areas. They're just kind of bust in, bust out, in a very kind of almost prison labor type situations. Like, you're bringing prison workers in essentially to help with their economy. That's what Israel is doing here. And they you leave your family in this open air prison every day, and then all of a sudden you have spent for the last 2 days in the West Bank, being personally afraid for your life because of the fears of armed West Bank settlers. That but again, Israel is arming. Israel is arming en masse. They're filling these people up with guns. As much as their bloodthirsty hearts desire, and just going around to kill people. We'll show you an example of them doing that today in just a second. But not only are you worried about that, but then you're worried about the fact that your home, where all your family and all your friends is being bombed, and you can't do anything about it but watch. And it's just unimaginable. It is absolutely unimaginable. And, again, this is what's happening on the other side. This is what's happening when you hear all these stories about, horrific situations with, Israeli, again, as I said before, this is something that if you had told me that Hamas had treated Israeli civilians horribly and committed war crimes, I would believe it. I would say, especially in the fog of war, especially, with the people coming from this position that they are, it is absolutely, it is absolutely something that should be, completely condemned. And it's a horrible thing to say. But, and I'm, honestly, I'm still sure some of that stuff did happen. And I condemn all of that stuff that did happen. But, we're seeing now again, which is really the evidence that I am seeing in front of my face is forcing me here to change my opinion from the the videos of the Hamas people getting released, or sort of the Hamas releasing those people over the fence back into Israel. And what that Israeli woman said, there's no kind of overdubbing. It's just, she essentially says that, they were pretty chill. They were young guys who kind of just always watched us in our homes. They even asked before I took a banana, before to take a banana from the fruit bowl. It was not the worst thing in the world. Dealing with these Hamas, those two incidents, the instance of, Joe Biden essentially inciting mass hatred of Muslims and Gazans and Palestinians there by, his comments that were completely false, a complete and utter lie, saying he was president of the United States is going to have tremendous inciting consequences. It is a horrific crime, the fact that he even said what he said, because of just, how many, the information worm that will now be that much deeper into people's ears. And, the chances are a fraction of those people are going to see the clarification on that he never saw those pictures, and just basing it off of the already existing, reports that are already under, so much scrutiny from people who are on that same international press tour. It's, again, a press tour that was run by the IDF, which is the army that is currently committing war crimes in Gaza right now. It's like, if you look at that, if you look at all this information, like that is forcing me to change my original opinion to be even more skeptical than I already was of some of these stories coming out of Israel at the moment. Like, that is a really kind of hard thing to do, because there's been so much hectoring of the left these days about, you have to condemn Hamas. And, there's people who, like the Palestinian ambassador in the UK, it was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. There's not really too many Palestinian voices kind of going on in American media, so there hasn't been as many, kind of crazy incidents coming out of it. But, they have, I guess, more by law, regulated equal time stipulations in Israel, in the UK. But this Palestinian ambassador was like, I lost 6 of my family members in an airstrike. And then, no joke, this lady asked him, do you condemn Hamas? Like, this is the level that these people are on. All this stuff, we are getting it back and forth, but nobody will condemn or even care about any of the stuff that's going on. They won't even talk about it. And if you try and talk about it, you're going to be accused of not, condemning Hamas enough. And that, I think, speaks much more about the person on the Israeli side of things than on the Palestinian. So really just a horrific situation all around. So discussions are underway for a safe between the U.S., Egyptian, and Israeli officials for the safe passage of American citizens living in the Gaza Strip, according to a social media post by Wall Street Journal reporter. Vivian Solima of WSJ quoted an unnamed U.S. State Department official as saying that affected U.S. nationals are looking to leave through the southern Rafah crossing into Egypt. About 500 to 600 American citizens live in Gaza, some of whom are looking for a safe passage, including via the Rafah crossing into Egypt. This is Salama, who wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. This is, again, according to a State Department official. Earlier, Israel issued advisory telling residents of Gaza that those who are able to leave should do so through the Rafah crossing. That is really some pretty incredible stuff. Just like, all the 500, 600, American nationals, which, by the way, what the hell are they doing in there? How did that, I'm sure there are probably some people, they got the Palestinian family, American. I just am totally unclear about how all that works. The fact that they're only letting these, 500, 600 people out just because they're American is just, and then the rest of the people who are just about to get bombed, in silence and in the dark is just really bleak. Just bleak to think about, and I'm this is obviously not to say that those people shouldn't get out, but just the fact that those other people, so many, 2.2 million people are still behind, is just really, really scary to think about. So defense minister, kind of a hard pivot back to the Israeli government here. The war cabinet, which is going to lead this, kind of oncoming siege here. The War Cabinet is a body within this new emergency unity government and consists of the Prime Minister, his Defense Minister, and Opposition Leader Benny Gantz. You have to bear in mind that Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant already have the right to take any decision pertaining to war without consulting the government and the Knesset. That is, after Israel triggered a law that gives them the right to do so, probably some sort of emergency law. But having the War Cabinet will take away all accusations against Netanyahu that he's going at it alone, that he's making his own decisions, and that he doesn't have people who have extensive military experience within his ruling coalition. Gantz was a former defense minister who, by the way, proudly bombed Israeli civilians in Gaza during 2014. He led I think he was one of the people who coined the term about mowing the grass, which is these occasional operations against Palestinian civilians to kind of keep them back in line, before it gets too tall and too unruly, this grass that they call Palestinians. The stated goal of the military is to eliminate Hamas's military capability. There has been no talk of the civilian arm of Hamas, but I honestly think we all know what they are going to do. And so if the War Cabinet wants to broaden up the scope of this war, then it will have to consult the wider emergency unity government, which consists of members of Netanyahu's ruling coalition plus 5 members of Gantz's National Unity Party. All right. Really, really incredible stuff on this White House report. We have some kind of mixed, also meanwhile, some mixed kind of reactions from world leaders. Duterte calling Israel calling on Israel to turn Gaza into the world's biggest cemetery, which is quite something. But it really is. It really is quite remarkable, as this comes as some of the dehumanizing language against the people of Gaza, who again that they're being urged from people around the world to turn into really turn the territory into a cemetery. It is really scary times. And again, this is a report here from Al Jazeera about some of the dehumanizing language against Palestinians that, if you've studied anything about, the lead up to the genocide and the dehumanization processes that precede it, this should be ringing some alarm bells here.
Israeli politicians and military leaders have been using inflammatory language when referring to Palestinians in Gaza. And this is something that began well before Hamas launched its military offensive.
No electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We are fighting against human animals.
That was the Israeli defense minister, Yoav Gallant, referring to members of Hamas. His language was echoed by senior military leaders.
Human beings are dealt with accordingly. Israel has imposed a total blockade on Gaza. No electricity, no water. You wanted hell, you will get hell. Again, these people. Again. It's like it's so stupid, by the way, to be arguing with these people, but it is the really these people. They don't want hell. They just want to be free. You're the ones who put them in hell every day. So it's so really just these insidious languages of you asked for us to bomb you by in any way resisting. And if you look at, this is not just me speaking, this is the UN speaking. If you look at the conditions that the Palestinians are under, which, is clearly a siege and occupation and all that, they have the right to resistance. It is a fact. It is, if you want to, attack the UN, if you want to say that the UN is an unfit body, I guess you could do that. Israel's done it in the past, but that doesn't change the fact that is the consensus of the international community, if that's what the UN is supposed to represent, that they have the right to defend themselves. Because, by the way, it shouldn't be that crazy because, after all we've heard, Israel does too. Anyway, this comes, really as all of this, quote unquote, defending of oneself. It is. You're already seeing it happening on the West Bank, where there is armed Israelis, just shooting any Palestinian at their state. This is on video. We saw some allegations that Hamas was doing this at the music festival. No video that at least I've seen. Maybe maybe I'll be sent one or shown one that proves me wrong, which I totally accept. But the fact is, this is a video clearly of Israelis shooting just point blank. Israeli settlers kind of armed with, full weapons, just shooting at just people at whatever they say. Apparently 3 people have died. Cars, houses, and electric pools were also burned, apparently. This is many in serious condition. Apparently 3 people, and at least so far. Some more are in critical condition, but 3 so far have died. And, if you look at the way things are going and, the currents within Israel right now, you have to imagine that is something that is very much more to come on that front. So meanwhile, it is some really, really, really horrific situations kind of going on in America in terms of reaction as well. This is at a Dem meeting today, where Susan Wild said that she was working to organize interfaith gatherings in her constituency. Josh Gottheimer, one of the worst, obviously a pro-Israel member of Congress, but also somebody who is really just bad on every single issue, just a no-labels partisan person. He said he was worried, again, these are Muslims in Lehigh fucking Valley, Pennsylvania. This is an absolutely astounding comment here by Judge Gottheimer, which is, really reminiscent of the post 9/11 days of, blood, at least in the way that I saw them, and the way that, people like my parents, people that, who have been alive for them, I've seen people, the way they talk about it, clearly that fervor is right back up. This unquenchable thirst for blood, for, and just attack without any sort of reservation, without any sort of, just looking at what the impact will be on civilians, looking at, just in any kind of way, the context of the horrific crimes that are, have been done since Hamas invaded and have been done in the many, many years prior. This is this full charge ahead. And if you don't stand behind Israel 100%, you are at least attempted to be drummed out of public life. This is Ryan Grimm here, Prem Thakkar, and Akila Lacey as well. And for The Intercept, in a heated exchange during a closed-door Democratic caucus meeting on Wednesday, Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey allegedly made an off-color remark to another member during a broader discussion to Muslim clerics on a broader discussion on Muslim clerics attending Jewish events that stunned his colleagues, according to 3 sources with knowledge of the meeting. In Wednesday's caucus meeting, according to 2 sources, a member discussed wanting both Jewish and Muslim constituents to feel comfortable attending events to support each other. This is Chris Wild, Susan Wild of Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. So she's saying, I want to have both Muslims and Jews who are, mourning people in that part of the world right now to be able to come together, which is a perfectly, fair thing to do. And I think it's a great step towards peace. The fact that two peoples can get together at the same place and, mourn their dead without getting hopefully into any sort of arguments, I think is a great step to, what should happen eventually, which is, Palestinians and Jews being able to live side by side, God willing, inshallah. I don't know how to say it in Jewish, in Hebrew. So there, Susan Wild's going on and on about that and saying, perfect reasonable stuff. And then Gottheimer sits back in the room, it's unbelievable. Some present thought he was responding to comments from the front of the room and saying Muslim clerics felt guilty. Gottheimer's comment left many in the room stunned, according to a member in the room. He clearly just goes in the back of the room, says, many Muslim clerics are not going to feel comfortable coming to a Jewish event. Gottheimer goes, it's because they're guilty. A Democrat in the room said that after making his remark, Gottheimer could be seen having an animated discussion about it with Greg Cesar of Texas, who has been spotting in Israel, but, shout out to him. Despite an anti-Israel fueled smear campaign, Congressman Gottheimer never said anything about Muslims in today's caucus meeting, a community he cares deeply about, said Gottheimer's spokesperson, Chris D'Eloia. Gottheimer said that the members of Congress who have not yet condemned Hamas terrorists should feel guilty. Again, it always comes back to, can you condemn the Hamas terrorists? It's just like, oh my God. It's just like, again, and even if it still doesn't matter. You could condemn them. You could say that they're horrible. You could say that they're the worst people ever. You could say, I really hate them so much and they're so bad and I want them all to die. And it would still not be enough for them to A, not accuse you of being sympathetic enough to Israel, and B, accuse you of being anti-Semitic because you're not taking the crimes of Hamas seriously enough, even if after you've condemned them. So again, it almost brings the point. This is especially, again, for their anti-Jewish remarks. This is especially coming after the videos that have come out in recent days of Jews, especially in America, protesting and calling for the complete genocide of Gazans. So, and again, no one's ever going to condemn that. A, and B, for a good chunk of people, no condemnation will ever be enough because it's the only tool they have to shut down an argument about the actual conflict, not an argument about the singular crimes of Hamas on this singular day, which, as I said, there were. It is my, strong belief that there were because, at the very least, it was a fucking war. Crimes happen. This is, of course, notwithstanding of the fact that many of those claims made by Israelis have come under some questioning. This doesn't mean they're conclusively proven false, but it means that there needs to be, some sort of basic, discussion, nuance about it. But again, no condemnation for them is ever going to be enough, because they don't want to discuss, they don't want to discuss the crimes of the Israelis. They don't want to discuss how you end the crimes of the Israelis and, what the Palestinians have been through. They do not want to discuss that at all. They want to only discuss how Hamas has butchered Israelis for the first time ever. And that is why, things are so bad, because they just cannot have that other conversation. And it's really horrific to see. Progressive advocates called for action. I urge Democratic leadership to take action against Congressman Gottheimer, whose comments will only serve to embolden violent Islamophobes and extremists around the country who already have a history of saying death threats to Muslim members of Congress. Comments like these endanger the entire American Muslim community, which is quite important there, I would say. All right, so we will, continue our. I think we'll end today on a really important piece coming out of Gaza, and it is really something. So this is Maram Humaid from Gaza City. She writes, "As I write this, I no longer believe we'll get out of this alive. On Wednesday, I woke from my sporadic sleep to the sound of the bombardment that has continued nonstop for the past 4 nights. Each day, we wake up in a different house, but each day, the sounds and smells we wake to are the same. Our home was badly damaged on the first night of the bombardment, so we moved to my parents' home. Then on Tuesday, a missile strike that destroyed a home just one building away left my parents' home uninhabitable. So we came to the home of my in-laws. Now there are 40 of us here. It feels as though missiles are following us, getting closer with each strike, and we are running out of places to run to. I prayed Fajr, the pre-sunrise prayer, and then laid down beside my 2-month-old son as he slept. I couldn't smell his skin, his hair, through the stench of gunpowder, smoke, and dust that seems to permanently fill the air. It was just a few moments later that the windows blew in, covering us with shards of glass. I instinctively covered his tiny body with my own. Then I grabbed and ran, all while crying out for my 8-year-old daughter. Banyas, where is Banyas? I pleaded as everyone ran, all of us calling out for the children, our parents, amid the mayhem. When I found her, she was crying and shaking. My husband and I took turns hugging her to comfort her as best we could, knowing there was so little comfort to be found. Still shaken, we ran downstairs to the ground floor so we could leave if needed. But then the bombardment appeared to stop. Outside, the air attacks had leveled yet another home just meters from where we were. It was hit without prior warning. Sometimes a small strike is followed by a large one. Thankfully, the people who lived there were not inside when it struck. When we were still at my parents' home, we had similarly run downstairs amid the shouts and cries of neighbors wanting one another to take cover after a strike hit a nearby building. The moments waiting for the second, bigger strike to hit were unbearable. I held my baby tightly and turned his face towards my chest, as though I could shield him from the dust and fumes from that explosion. Hours passed. Then on Tuesday evening, a big missile hit, flattening the building. Our screams filled the air amid the sound of shattered glass and objects. About 10 minutes later, the dust settled, and we saw my parents' front door and windows had been destroyed, and the furniture was covered in debris. We quickly packed our belongings and left. I thought my parents' home would be safe. I thought my in-laws' place would be safe. But where do we go next? There is not a home in Gaza that's safe. And that is just one of the many, many accounts that have been coming out of Gaza again. And it's like, look, you could condemn the Israeli crimes the Hamas crimes, as much as there were, to your blue in the face. But that doesn't change, the fact that nobody on the Israel side, who supports this government, who supports this project, this political project, is ever going to, acknowledge it, is ever going to treat it with severity or the seriousness that you're saying it with. Even if you mean it with the most amount of seriousness or the least amount of seriousness, it will not be enough to them. And it's still does not change the fact that Gazans and people in the West Bank have been living under, at the very least, 56 years of occupation, 75 plus years of displacement, and just endless days, endless hours, endless minutes of absolute hell. War crimes on the daily for years and decades, and just decades. And the things that the Palestinians go through on a daily basis cannot compare to the plight of Israelis on one day. Cannot compare with the plight of the Palestinians just in the last 4 days, or let alone the plight with the Palestinians and their whole diaspora since 1948. It just cannot compare, and that is why I will not let, at least me, coming from my perspective, speaking just for myself, I will not let anyone try and tell me to be quiet, to fall in line, to say that, Israel, you can't talk about this right now. You have to, do this a certain way. You have to speak a certain way about this. I will not stop, talking about this. And it's really not saying much, because I'm in America. I'm living a very comfortable life. I'm just sitting here, just talking. But with the reaction that has provoked, even in the last few days, just not just from me, but from so many other people just speaking out, using their voices in a time like this, and the reaction that's provoked, I feel like it is, it makes me feel that it's even more important to do, and it makes me feel like, it just makes me feel even more emboldened that, when I see that, and when I see this reaction, and then when I see the crimes of Israelis and the stories of Palestinians, it just makes me just want to never shut the fuck up. Just keep talking about this till I'm blue in the face to all these people here, to make them know, to make them understand, and never just abandon this cause. So it is, I'm not trying to say I just kind of hate what I said there, because it just makes me sound way, just like almost heroic, which is like ridiculous. But, for all the people out there, the very least you can do is know your stuff about this, know what's going on, being able to understanding it, being able to talk about it to people. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel, too much. But, as Muhammad al-Kurd said, it's way fucking better than being carpet bombed. And it is the absolute least we as Americans can do. All right. Until Friday, it's Newsflash.